Personal flying is in, with more than 500,000 pilots in the United States alone. These pilots are people like Joe and Fran Carver. Their family travels may cover 1,500 miles in a day, and it's the easiest kind of travel. Joe and Fran are both pilots. They enjoy taking turns at the controls. Some pilots travel on business. These are people like Dave Grant. Dave is a manufacturer's representative. He covers a lot of ground. His flying time is less than 1/3 of the time he spent driving his car. He covers the ground more effectively and gets home about 10 more nights a month than he used to. Some pilots fly for fun. For example, Barb Younger and Celeste Dean. They share the same airplane, the same babysitter, the same interests. Of course, their flying does have a practical application too. With flying time less than an hour to a major city, it's easy to go shopping. And there was a time when pilots wore leather helmets. Ed Martin is a corporation executive. His children are now grown and off flying on their own. Ed flies for business and pleasure and takes his wife along on trips to his board meetings. Families, salesmen, young marrieds, executives, and you can add teenagers, doctors, sportsmen, and many retired people. They have something in common: this offer. They all responded at one time or another to the offer of a special introductory flight lesson for just $5. On that one, heads or tails, they won. What would happen if you responded to that offer? The same thing that has happened to many thousands of other very normal and sensible people. Look here. New interests, fresh experiences, acquisition of new skills, development of new acquaintances, and the opening up of a completely new dimension in travel and recreation. Welcome home, kids. They came in and asked for an introductory lesson. So did the Carvers. The Martins. So did Dave Grant. So did Ben Doyle. It happens all the time. I'm senior instructor for this Piper Flight Center. My business is helping people to learn to fly. People like Ben Doyle, or you. Ben saw the ad for a special $5 introductory flight lesson. He was a little apologetic about not having brought the ad. We explained he didn't need it. That ad is a flat offer, not a coupon. As soon as an instructor is available, and one was, and the minute an airplane is ready to go, you fly. Even on the introductory lesson, Ben sat in the left seat. That's the captain's side. You might as well get used to it. It's a seat you'll always occupy. Ben flew the Cherokee right off the ground, with advice and a little help from the instructor. And so can you. There are plenty of new things to learn, and some familiar ones to be seen from a completely new perspective. For example, home. That's it. Now, why didn't Ben think to tell the family he'd be looking right down the chimney? Better yet, he could have brought two of them along for the ride. That's something for you to remember. Learning maneuvers, Ben found that back pressure on the control column caused the airplane to climb. Logically enough, forward pressure has the opposite effect. A touch of back pressure to bring the airplane level again, and then a neutral position. Turns are just as easy and come as naturally as turning a car. Wheel to the left for a left turn. For a turn to the right, simply turn the wheel to the right. The tilting or banking of the airplane makes a turn more comfortable. It's like the banked curves on a well-planned highway. Ben was beginning to get the hang of it and learned that flying consists of holding the airplane level, or simple combinations of climbing, descending, and turning. Heading back to the field, Ben knew he was really getting the feel of the airplane. Ben received his pilot's logbook. That first flight, when entered, became the first in a series of lessons that were to lead to his becoming a qualified pilot, entitled to carry passengers and to fly where he wanted, when he wanted. Ben learned that personal flying is no more expensive than golf or water skiing. He found that he could schedule lessons on a pay-as-you-go basis or select one of several complete courses leading to a license. Many Piper flight centers arrange financing. He learned the great advantages of Piper standardized training. He was told that he could rent an airplane like a car, or that flying clubs offered significant savings through joint ownership. Ben had found a fascinating new pursuit with endless and rewarding possibilities. As with any other worthwhile interest, a pilot never stops learning. The boating enthusiast reads everything he can find on seamanship. The fisherman is an ardent student of lures and techniques. The golfer is always learning, and the baseball fan knows all the batting averages. Modern audio-visual equipment and aviation publications are available to the student pilot, helping him to pursue his new avocation.
And its use, starting with the four forces. There are four forces that act on the aircraft while in flight: lift, gravity, thrust, and drag. Lift, the most important of the four forces, opposes gravity and permits the aircraft to rise into the air.
Before Ben started his lessons, he thought the panel was filled with strange, complex instruments. Surprisingly, most of them turned out to be old friends, like the clock and the speedometer, a magnetic compass and a gyro compass, a gyro horizon to show the airplane's attitude in relation to the horizon, an instrument to show the rate at which the airplane is turning, another to show the rate of climb or descent, and, of course, an altimeter to show the height at which the airplane is flying. There are the engine instruments, a voltmeter for the battery, oil pressure, oil temperature, an ammeter for the alternator, a fuel gauge for each tank, fuel pressure, and a tachometer, like those in many of today's cars. A communications radio and navigation radio, with an indicator to tell which course to fly to or from the station. The more Ben learned, the more he admired the airplane. So inherently stable that it will fly with only gentle pressures and with no hands at all. He discovered that some of his ideas about airplanes were far from the facts. All his life, for example, he'd heard about something called an air pocket. His instructor explained that air is like a fluid in motion, usually smooth, but changes in wind and weather sometimes produce ripples and eddies in the air, which are just like the ripples and eddies of a brook. Then there were stalls. Ben learned that this term has nothing to do with stopping of the engine. The instructor reminded him that until a sufficient speed has been reached in the takeoff run, the airplane would not fly. Stalls, then, commonly occurred when the airplane was slowed to or very near that same speed, so that the wing no longer provided lift. By reducing power and raising the nose, the instructor caused the airplane to lose speed. Considerably before the stalling speed is reached, a warning light tells the pilot it is time to take corrective action. This, in a modern light plane, simply calls for the pilot to lower the nose and add power. Speed is regained with little loss of altitude. But what if the engine stopped completely? Because today's aircraft engines are built to such rigid standards, with dual systems and with preventative maintenance, engines rarely fail. Even if failure does occur, the airplane then becomes a glider. When Ben brought up the point, the instructor deliberately stopped the engine to demonstrate. From a height of 8,000 feet above the ground, this airplane will glide to Earth almost 15 miles from its starting point. The pilot has 10 minutes in which to find a suitable landing place. Often more than one airport is available within reach. After all, there are more than 10,000 airports in the United States. There are, in addition, any number of other possible landing sites, such as level farm fields and open meadows. Engines may be restarted in flight. The electric starter will do it. So will the windmilling motion of the propeller in a faster glide. First solo is a big occasion for the student pilot. Normally, it comes after 10 to 12 hours of flight instruction. It is an equally big occasion for the instructor, demonstrating his confidence that his student is ready to go it alone. Flight instructors are members of a highly trained but little-known profession. They must meet the high standards established by the Federal Aviation Agency. These include experience, knowledge of their subject, and a high degree of skill. Also emphasized is teaching skill itself. The instructor undergoes rigorous examination in the air and on the ground. His initial certification is followed at regular intervals by checkup examinations. The certified flight instructor takes pride in his profession and in the accomplishments of his students. Many flight instructors, like the first officers aboard the airliners, are young men. Young, but expertly trained. The flight instructor feels a deep sense of responsibility for the safe and thorough training of student pilots. We try to select and train, and then to keep the best young men we can find. There is a strong bond between instructor and student. They share moments of high achievement, and these are times of quiet pride for the instructor. Well, Ben had reached the point of putting his new skills to work on his first cross country. Ben, like many other businessmen, made the trip doubly practical. Flying to Chicago on business, he took his instructor along and was able to log the dual cross-country time toward his pilot's license. Ben learned to use his communications radio just like the telephone, to talk to the Federal Flight Service stations along his route, to get information on weather, the winds aloft, or any in-flight information he desired. Also, when using the relatively few larger airports, which have control towers, there would be takeoff and landing information. He found that today's radio aids made navigation simpler than following road signs. He could set his navigation radio to any course he wanted to travel. The needle showed whether he was flying left or right of the course and to or from the station. In this case, right on course to Chicago. Ben found that aeronautical charts are easy to read. They show faithfully and recognizably features of the land and water, cities and highways, easily identified with those seen below. Landing at Chicago's downtown airport saved time-consuming ground travel. Ben was already discovering some of the business benefits of personal flying. Heading for home, Ben could look forward to reaching there in time to enjoy dinner with his family. After logging between 40 and 50 hours of flying time, Ben qualified for his private pilot's license, which allows him to operate an airplane with the same freedom with which he operates his car. Now, of course, Ben is one of our flying family, and a very active one. And when we say flying family, we mean the kids as well. They're learning naturally. They've worked out a game that only airport kids would think of. They've learned that the orderly movement of air traffic follows patterns as clearly understood as those of a highway, with no need for painted lines. Extra separation for added safety is provided by choice of altitudes for aircraft moving in different directions. Pilots everywhere know how it's done. You, too, can know and use the rules of the road that make air traffic the most orderly of any. Ben Doyle knows how, and so does his little son. The children's game of traffic pattern duplicates the systematic flow of aircraft in and out of an airport. For all of these wonderful people, flying is a way of life. I said those people have something in common. It's this. They all responded to the offer of a $5 introductory flight lesson. Because they did, they're enjoying life more. They're doing their business traveling more effectively. I think they're even better parents. What about you? This could be you.